Hello, everyone. It's really nice to see so many people and some well-known faces here. My name is Susan Oliveira. I would like to welcome you all to this online conference. I'm a lifelong learning platform steering committee member on behalf of the European Association for the Education of Adults. I'm a former board member of this association, and I would like once again to welcome you all. Of course, you all know that you are here for a conference about the wider benefits of learning, why it is important to measure these benefits, and how we can measure the benefits, the wider benefits of learning. And this is a conference organized by the Lifelong Learning Platform, very well represented here, with some staff members, which I can see in the windows. The Lifelong Learning Platform, for those of you who don't know us, is an umbrella association that gathers more than 40 European organizations active in the field of education, training, and youth. Our members are European networks active in formal, non-formal, and informal education sectors. We are originally based in Brussels, although the steering committee members, as myself, we are spread all over Europe. I'm speaking to you from Portugal, for example. We are also an advocacy organization, and we take part in European projects like this one, which we are presenting to you today. This conference, some useful logistics information for you. This conference will last 1 hour and 30 minutes around it, and it's the final conference of the European project, which we call Tampada. You will understand what it means and listen more about it with the support of Pauline in a few minutes. The meeting is recorded, so if you want to make sure that you are not in the video, please turn off your video camera and make sure your microphone is muted during the conference. The recording will be shared, of course, in the YouTube channel of the platform later. You can also post on social media, please do it. Using the hashtags Tampada and Lifelong Learning 2030 and tag the Lifelong Learning Platform, please. We are also very happy to see that we have more than 100 participants. When we saw the registrations, we saw that we had more than 100 registrations, but we never know with so many online events what will happen. So it's really nice to see that everyone is here. Some of you registered from outside the European Union, as we already, Pauline already mentioned it. We have people from Asia, people from Australia, people from Europe, but not European Union. It's really nice to see that. And we have set a Mentimeter tool precisely to ask you some questions, also to ice break a little bit, to ask you where are you from, and to see who is in the audience. So I'm not sure if someone from LLLP has already posted the link in the chat, but please, you can use your computer, tablet, or your phone to answer the questions. You can see the link and the code.
Yes, it's on your screen, so you can connect on Menti.com.
And the first question is, which country are you from? So please go to Mentimeter and answer. We can see a very nice cloud with the results. EU, we're faster. Yes. So Sweden, Poland, Austria, Ireland in the center. Do we have many Irish colleagues here, I suppose? Instead of writing it in the chat, if you can write it on Mentimeter, it would be nice. I can see also Portugal, Belgium, Belgium, Flanders, not sure if this is a message. Cyprus, Switzerland. Okay, no one can beat Ireland today. Hungary, Macedonia, Greece, Spain, Lithuania, Latvia, Finland, well, Japan. Okay, so maybe we can move to the next question. Do you think so, Pauline?
Yeah, sure.
The second question is, where do you work? And you have several options. So basically what we would like to know is which sector of education you represent. So we can see adult education, public administration, the majority of people are mentioning that, civil society organization, university. So yes, we also have a wide range of people representing different sectors, which is very good because we are mostly speaking about the wider benefits. It's not exclusively for adult education. Most of the benefits, as you will see, can also be reflected on other sectors of education, of course. So yes, finally, the third question. If you can please name examples of wider benefits of learning. In the sense that even the concept sometimes is a bit tricky, and in different countries we can have different conceptions and we can prioritize different things. So please make sure you can name some examples. Confidence, mental health, a better labor market position, civic engagement, participation, life joy, which is a very interesting one. More friends. Yes, basically, well, I would say that if we should have a winner here, it would be definitely confidence or building confidence, and health, meaning mental health, and not only. Everything else is related with it. Yes, we have civic engagement, participation, active citizenship. It would be relatively easy to group them. So yes, finally, I would like to tell you that if you have questions for the speakers during the conference, you can also use the same tool. So do use Mentimeter to raise your questions during the presentations and the roundtable, the virtual roundtable that we will have in some minutes. I would now give the floor to Pauline. She will present the project to you. Thank you. Welcome, Pauline.
Thank you very much, Susanna, for this introduction. And thank you to you all for playing with Mentimeter. So just wait a second that my presentation appear. It just seems that my computer is a bit slow this morning. Yes, this is working. So hi everyone, I am Pauline from the Lifelong Learning Platform. I'm a project and policy coordinator. And we were a partner in the Tempada project, and that's why I am presenting today the results of this very inspiring project. As Susanna mentioned, anytime you can still use the Mentimeter and ask questions on the project. And if there is time after my presentation, I will try to answer those questions. Otherwise, be certain that I will collect the questions and I will share the answers after the conference by email or in a short web article. So the Lifelong Learning Platform is an NGO based in Brussels, and it's been since 2005, but we are very engaged in advocacy work on social inclusion and personal development for education. And we always advocate that education is not just for employment and labor market needs, it's also for social inclusion and personal development. We also have a working group with our members on wider benefits of learning, where we discuss these topics in this area. And one of them is actually our annual theme for this year, for 2021. This is on the changing nature of evaluation in education and its impact on learners' well-being. If you go on our website, you can find more information on how we're going to deal with this topic and to see what are the activities that we are foreseeing for this year. And also, again, you can tweet using the hashtag LLL2030, and you can tag the Lifelong Learning Platform, so we can also share your tweets. So in my 20 minutes or so presentation, I will first tell you about why it is important, or why we think at least it is important to measure the wider benefits of learning. And I will present for this what is the European context and what is the challenge we're trying to answer with this European project. Then I will present what is TEMPADA. I'm sure you're all wondering what is TEMPADA standing for. So I will give you the answer, and I will also present one of the main outputs in this project, which is the TEMPADA digital assessment tool. And finally, I will give you results from the pilot testing on this tool, and also some recommendations that we can all take at home and at work and use in our everyday life to promote, of course, the wider benefits of learning. So why measuring the wider benefits of learning? Well, first, there's some of you are from the European Union, others not, but just to give you a brief overview on the European policy context in which I think this conference is quite relevant. There are several European policies. One is the European Skill Agenda, and a revision of this policy was published last year. And if you look at this policy, you will find a mention of life skills of adults. So all the skills are not just for your work, but for instance, health management, management of your finances and so on are considered as life skills. And there are also wider benefits of learning. Also in the European Skill Agenda, you will see mentioned that European member states are encouraged to develop national skill strategy, and that includes also soft skills, which very often are not evaluated in in education as a whole, but also in adult education. There's also the upskilling and reskilling initiatives, which very much focus on the labor market, unfortunately, but that is very important. It is addressed to adults. In the European Union, we have also the European qualification frameworks, which outline the learning outcomes for each of the qualification. Unfortunately, it really focuses on the qualification and doesn't, includes to a lesser extent soft skills and soft outcomes, because it's really focused on qualification and jobs and so on. And finally, this year, hopefully we will have a revision of the European Agenda for Adult Learning, and this will be led by the presidency of the Council of the European Union, which in the second semester will be led by the Slovenian EU presidency. In terms of socio-economic context that is relevant for wider benefits of learning, well, we are now convinced, and we see so many data and studies that shows that there's an increasing interest in soft outcomes and skills and how to validate them, how to measure them. You see it from the employer side, from the policymaker side, from the educational stakeholder side. Everywhere there is this awareness. However, in practice, this is not yet very much measured. Also, at least, LLLP works really at the European level and follows the policy, and it is this is very obvious that European policymakers very often much focus on the education for the labor markets, leaving on the side the role of education for personal development and social inclusion, which is highly important. And on the same side, well, there's a good trend is that now with all this technological revolution, we see that there is a trend for collecting better data, for better data collection. And one example at European level is the very recent initiative on the graduate tracking in higher education. But yet in adult education, there are initiatives, but they are quite limited at the moment. Even though the question of wider benefits of learning is definitely not a new question. Back in 2000, so 20 years ago, there was a key study on which is a guide to measuring soft outcomes and distance traveled. So it already explained what our soft outcomes are, and it says that measuring them is important to provide a full picture of the impact of a learning program. So there are already studies saying this. I also want to mention the benefits of lifelong learning projects, which ended but was conducted in the past years. And you can find here the website. There are very insightful resources on this website on this topic. But as I said, those initiatives remain quite scattered, time-bounded, especially when they come from projects that unfortunately has a hand, like Tempala, and are very rarely supported by public authorities to be nationally implemented in the curriculum, for instance, or even in non-formal education. So we do know that lifelong learning has huge advantages to those who are taking part in it. And we know that these advantages extend far beyond just the knowledge and skills that you acquire. For instance, you can develop your self-confidence. You feel more socially included because you meet with people and you make new friends. And this is very often actually a first step before getting a job. So you also need to go and learn and recreate some confidence in yourself. And it can improve your health, can improve your well-being. So we have seen this. There are many research and studies that really show that there are many benefits for learning for the learners. And we also know that this development of the soft outcomes and skill can really influence the learners' life changes and social mobility. And especially, this is especially true for disadvantaged learners who might have not had the opportunity at school to really succeed. But if we consider the wider benefits of learning, we can see that actually education can really compensate a bad experience that they might have at school in adult education. And so that drives us to the challenge here is how do we record and how do we demonstrate those benefits to the stakeholders? And we can think of funding bodies, of course, the staff in education institutions, the teachers, the adult education centers leaders, any staff in adult education, of course, the public authorities, but I think the most important stakeholder here is the learner themselves. And the second question is, how can we measure and compare the effectiveness of the learning programs on these soft outcomes, and ensure afterwards that the learners are provided with the best learning program, which has the best and the most impact on them, a positive impact, of course. And so we have all this challenge, and what's Tempada? Well, it's an attempt to answer the challenge and to provide a solution to the question that I raised. So Tempada stands for tracking and monitoring the progress of adult learners. It's a European funded project. It's run for 30 months, and it's actually ending this month. It was coordinated by UK Adult Education Network from Derbyshire. And there are also 2 other adult education centers as partner. One is from Slovenia, another one is from Sweden. In Greece, we have a project management company as partner, and Belgium is the lifelong learning platform. And we did focus on disadvantaged learners, as it was one of the main beneficiary of adult learning course among the partners. And also because we think that there's even more added value in measuring the wider benefits of learning for this population. So what we did in Tempada, and I will explain what this kind of words, abstract word means afterwards. We built an outcomes framework and a digital toolkit for tracking and monitoring the lifelong and life-wide progression of adult learners, as well as looking at their destinations. So where do they want to go? Where do they start? And what is the progression towards the destination, a goal, an aspiration that they want to achieve after the learning. And we did first a toolkit which capture the wider outcomes and impacts of learning, and I will present it afterwards. And for this, we conducted research, and we looked at primary and secondary research sources, and it was done across Europe, but especially in the partner country. So it's an evidence-based work that we did here. And this is the 4 areas that we found key in the wider benefits of learning, and under which we developed outcomes indicators. The first one is development of self and life skills. The second one is health and well-being. The third one is employability, employment and learning. And this is the one usually that is already assessed or evaluated in education. And the last one, also very important, is the benefits in terms of social life and community and citizenship. And so in the first publication that you can find on the website, tempada.eu, we also included in this toolkit forms, paper forms that you can use for the measurement of learners' progress. So this is an example of the outcomes indicators that you can find under health and well-being. So basically, to make it easier to work with disadvantaged learners, we wrote very easy to understand sentences that the teacher, when they do the assessment, will ask the learner which one is the most appropriate for him or her. And then the teacher, when filling the form, will write if it's 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. It's a scale. So based on this scale, we can measure the progress. So if I take the first one, which is life satisfaction, the first, let's say, level would be I feel dissatisfied with most aspects of my life. The second will be I am satisfied with some parts of my life, etc., until I'm very satisfied. And we will ask the learner how they feel, which one they feel is more appropriate, and that's how we would measure based on this outcome what they stand. This is another example of the outcomes indicators that we have under social, community, and citizenship. For instance, we have cultural awareness and tolerance, practicing environmental sustainability, encouraging others to learn, and etc., etc. You can find all these outcomes descriptions in the first publication of the Tempada project on the website in what is called the toolkit. In the results section, you can find them. And in this toolkit, we also design a 6-step methodology. So this is what we call the framework. So it starts with step 1, which is the strategic planning at the level of the adult education center. So I will explain in more detail the steps afterwards. The second step is the localized course planning. The first step is the first assessment. So we start from the start of the course with an assessment. Progress tracking is the 4th step, end of the course assessment, and then post-course monitoring. I will present it in more detail. So the strategic planning is looking really at any administration data to understand who are the learners, and also to understand what is the local demographic information. For instance, what is the issue, what kind of disadvantaged learners we are dealing with, and really to design and tailor the learning offer to those who need it most. The second step is the local planning. So here you decide, okay, we want to address this kind of group. We will decide which outcomes indicators we will assess them against. And in our toolkit, we recommend 8 to be compulsory in the list. So this is to enable better the benchmarking and cooperative tracking between the learners and the classes and so on. We don't recommend to choose more than 12 outcomes because it might be a lengthy process to measure all of them at once with the learners. So we recommend to choose between 8 and 12 outcomes to measure. This is an example. So for the first step and second step. So we want to solve the issue of social isolation and loneliness among the 50+ age group in our local area. So we decide to open a class of creativity and art. And these are the outcomes that we think are relevant for this course. So we choose resilience, anxiety, communication skills, happiness, and cultural awareness and tolerance. The first stage is the baseline assessment or the initial assessment. This is the one you start when the course starts. You ask the learners what is their current employment status and what are their personal motivations to take on the course, what is their goals, the learning goals, and so on, and what is their support needs. The 4th step is a formative assessment, or in other term is a midterm assessment. So this is very useful because you can see if the learners are making progress in your outcomes that you chose, and you can adapt the course perhaps to improve even more the impact that the course has on them and their progress, and to see what is going well and what might not go well for them. And you compare it to the initial assessment, and you provide comments to the learner at this stage. The fifth step is the summative assessment. So the assessment that is taking place towards the end. So you compare it with the previous assessment, you look again at the motivations and personal goals of the learner and see if they are achieved. You comment on it and you discuss with the learners what they want to do next and how this match their expectations, and you produce also the learner achievement record, which really show the progress that the learner has hopefully made during the class. And finally, another important step is the post-course monitoring. So whenever you have the possibility after the course to still be in touch with your learner, you can also get in contact with them and see if the progress that they made is lasting, and to see if if they're really progressing in life. And we did a second publication. It's called Manual for Interinstitutional Synergies. So basically, what is the aim of this publication? So you see again on your left the different steps from the recruitment of the learners to the first assessments, as well as the post-course monitoring. And on the right, you see examples of organizations that you can cooperate with to really, well, improve your outreach strategy with the learners, or really make the best use of all this monitoring that you're doing. And so you can find also this publication on the website. I'm not going into details, but you can have a look at it on the website in the results section. So just a reminder, the website is tempada.eu. And this is really about cooperating with other organizations for a better measurement of the wider benefits of learning. Now we have digitalized the toolkit that I presented before. We have made it a web-based tool for the assessment. This is how the digital assessment tool looks like. So first, the educational centers have to register themselves. It's free, everyone can do it. Unfortunately, I noticed that for now, only European countries plus Norway, Turkey, and Serbia are listed in the country list, but we can also, if you're interested from other parts of the world, you can we can check with the person who designed this tool and see if they can add additional countries to this list. So this is the dashboard. Once you're in the tool, so the first thing to do is to add teachers. So that will create login for them. And then you can add your students. So as I mentioned before, this is the step 2. So really when you recruit the learners, instead of doing it on paper, because some of you working in adult education centers may already do it, or even with their own administration system. But this is information that usually is collected, personal information, or maybe some of you don't collect some of the information that is listed here. We also ask if they have health issues. And of course, this, depending on the law, this might or might not be possible. But we also ask, okay, what is their employment status and so on. And in the second section of this form, we also ask what is their goal and motivation to take up the course. And that is very helpful for the summative assessment to see if we met this kind of goals. So the next step is, of course, to conduct the assessment. So you choose which phase you want to perform, and then the questions regarding the 4 areas. And this is an example of how the results can look like. So we have included charts and graphs to see the progress over time, so that you see on the bottom of your screen. You see also the scores regarding the outcomes indicators that's in a table. And this is another example of how you can see the results of this assessment. So this says like maybe 40% of your learners have improved in this case, verbal communication skills. You can compare then the learners' progress among each other, among different classes. And well, good news is that the tool is not only available in English, it's also available in Greek, Slovenian, Swedish, and French. And the website to go is the tempa.digitaltool.eu. Anyone can register at any time. And after this presentation, I will share a link for a Google form you can fill in if you're interested in using the tool and if you need support in the process. You can always express your interests. And we tested this tool in adult education centers in the partner organization. We tested it with the teachers, but also the learners to gather their feedback. And these are some of the comments that they made. Overall, it was very positive. So one of the positive thing that they commented about is that it really standardized and systematized the measurement process. So it's for some of them, it was a digitalization of a process which is usually done on paper. Also, the learner achievement record really motivates the learners to perform better. It can be used for a job search. You can compare the results again between learners and classes. It helps the teacher to better understand their students, and it can allow to identify issues which might hold learners back. And it's a tool that can also use by other organizations like in municipalities, in public authorities, public employment services. So this is one of the testimony from a learner. So they found it very useful to think about themselves and reach some conclusion that they wouldn't had reached otherwise. They realized that some areas they made progress without realizing it, and that this area is also considered as skill. So in short, the advantages of measuring the wider benefits of learning is to really collect evidence of learning, not only for the learner, the provider, but also other stakeholders. It really improves the quality in adult learning because based on the result, you can improve the service provision. So not only the learning programs, but the support service for the learner, like psychological support, guidance support. It has also other benefits for the provider, the educational provider, for instance, for recruitment, marketing. It really improves the motivation of the adults who are being measured. It can be useful for research as well, and also to inform policies. And these are the policy recommendations that we made in this project. And this is actually the last publication that is not yet ready, but we will publish it soon on the website and we will send it to you by email. This is important to better recognize the achievements of adults in learning. Also, learners should be always encouraged to self-reflect and self-evaluate during the learning progress so that they can internalize the value of their progress. This evaluation mechanism can be integrated in adult education quality assurance. Also, the staff using the tool or using this measurement should be supported in terms of funding, capacity building to use this tool. And finally, well, policymakers should be encouraged to look at this sort of results and tools and to build and design better policies. So that was it for me. And I'm slightly delayed, I notice. So I won't be able to answer your question now, but of course I will do it after the conference and will send it to you by email. But I have some questions for you very shortly. I need to stop sharing my screen and share it again. Also on Mentimeter. So I also look at your questions. Thank you for your questions in the chat. But we are almost 15 minutes late. So I will just launch now the Mentimeter. I have question for you on my presentation. Oops, doesn't. So the first question is, how useful is the Tempada results for your work? I'm glad to see that for most of you, it's somewhat useful or very useful. I will now move to the second question. If you're planning to use the results of this project in your work, what will be the main purpose? Could it be for research, policy making, or to measure your learners' progress, or it can also be overuse? Another question. So what do you think could help other education centers to measure the wider benefits of learning? I mentioned funding, that the staff get some capacity building. Do you have any other ideas how we can support the educational staff to use those tools? Okay, thank you very much. And I think this is the last question, and then I will give the floor to the panelists. What do you think are the main barriers for convincing policymakers to support tools like Tempada? All your inputs are very useful because, as I mentioned, we are writing policy recommendations, and so we will use them in our policy recommendations. Okay. So thank you very much for all your input. I will now move to the panel, and I will write in the chat the link to the Google form, so you can also express your interest in using the tool. Thank you very much for your attention. Susanna, the floor is yours.
Yes, so now we will have a panel discussion. I think that the insights Pauline gave us are very useful also for the discussion we are having now. Actually, the theme that we decided for this part of the conference is a question. Are we moving towards a new era of data collection and monitoring in the European education area? So this is the umbrella question for the three speakers. I will briefly present them, but first of all, I would like to remind you all that you can use Mentimeter to ask the questions during the panel discussion, and we will have some time for raising the questions to the panelists afterwards. So first of all, I would like to present Karin Nicolai, the National Coordinator for the European Agenda for Adult Learning from EPOS Flanders, Belgium. I would like also to present Martina Michele, senior expert from Skills, VET and Adult Learning from DG Ample from the European Commission. And finally, last but not the least, Maurice de Grief, Chairholder, UNESCO Chair on Adult Education from the Free University of Brussels. I would first of all give them 1 minute to present themselves to the audience, and then we will start the discussion. Please feel free, who wants to start? Karin?
Okay, I can start if you like. I'm Karin Nicolai, and I'm the National Coordinator for the European Agenda of Adult Learning in Flanders, Belgium. And as you perhaps know, every country or region can choose a project that helps realizing the goals of the Adult Learning Agenda. And in Flanders, we chose for a future-oriented project building on the Transition 2050 lifelong learning vision as supported by our government. The core of our project is in fact the website, and it's called Lang Leven Leren. And it can be translated as long live learning. The main message is that we dream of a world where everybody can live, learn and work with joy. And in Dutch, this with joy has a double meaning. In fact, it means with enthusiasm, but also experienced as meaningful. And we invite pioneers, doers, thinkers, and dreamers to share small and large examples that can change the way we live, learn, and work now and in the future. And in fact, I'm also the coordinator for EPALE in Flanders. That's the electronic platform for adult learning. So in this way, the synergy between these two projects is also guaranteed.
Thank you, Karin. Martina, please.
Good morning, everybody, and I'm so happy to see some familiar names in the participants. Some people I haven't seen for a long time, but I'd like to say hello to everybody. And I'm still, and will be for a few more months, working in the adult learning policy at the European Commission, and it's been a pleasure to accompany the European agenda for the past decade, and looking forward to continuity now, as somebody already mentioned, with the Slovene presidency, piloting some initiatives in the autumn. And in particular, I would say over the last few years, what I've been working on and what was a success of so many years of talking about the people who need literacy, numeracy, and basic digital skills, and the fact that we could achieve the upskilling pathways recommendation to help these people and to encourage member states to address the problem of the still 51 million adults of working age in the European Union that don't have the skills they need in daily life. And of course, many of them also have the problem that they don't see the benefit of learning to gain these skills. And so I think this is an important aspect of the work. And now, of course, we have the new skills agenda, which tries to set some new indicators, new targets, and make it more ambitious, because of course, we also have the recent European Pillar of Social Rights, which tries to make education, training, and lifelong learning a right for everybody. And of course, to achieve this, we really need learning in all its life-wide senses and environments to get everybody back to learning and involved in learning. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Definitely. Maurice?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Maurice de Greef. I'm a UNESCO chairholder of the UNESCO Chair on Adult Education. I'm working for the Free University of Brussels, And the last 10 years we conducted more than 120 studies in order to measure the impact of adult learning, and that's comparable with what you did with the Tampada project. And we did it among more than 10,000 participants, and we try to find out what the impact is for them in their daily life, but also on the labor market position and on health. So probably we have comparable results with what you're doing with your wonderful project.
Great to know. Well, my first question for the three of you is if you think there is enough attention to what we call the wider benefits of learning in adult education. Who would like to come first and say a few words about this?
Okay, I'll go. Okay, Maurice.
Karin, go on.
Okay. In fact, I first looked it up, what wider benefits of learning exactly were. So to be sure that we are talking about the same things. And in fact, I found it in the glossary of Epale and Pauline. I think you have a slide there. So there it says the wider benefits of learning are the non-economic benefits of learning on personal, emotional, and social life, health, and including the impact on the health and well-being of individuals and the impact on levels of crime and social cohesion within communities and society as a whole. So I've been, in fact, in the adult learning sector in Flanders for a while, and I think there has been an evolution in this. For example, the first reading and writing groups in Flanders at the time, they were organized by volunteers. Only after a while, they got support, and the first support came from the Ministry of Culture. So the accent was more on the personal development of the learners. But after a while, and after an ongoing discussion, in fact, the financing changed to the Department of Education, and also the expectations of the outcome of the courses changed to a more economical one. And since then, I think there have been two groups, the ones advocating that all learning should be supported, also when the learning is done primarily for more personal development, and others who find that mainly learning for professional reasons and economical reasons should be supported. Now recently, and that's the next slide, Pauline, recently there started a new partnership for lifelong learning in Flanders. And in fact, I'm very happy with the 4 challenges they set them for themselves, the partners. The first one is make everyone eager to learn, make learning accessible, and match supply and demand, and ensure that learning becomes work and work becomes learning. And this all in order to achieve a new learning system and a general change of mentality. And recently we worked together with Visit Flanders, and we made an ebook on lifelong learning. And also Ans de Vos is there in there with an interview. And I'm very happy that she talks about stimulating the joys of learning, and that she also encourages people to knowing their talents, what they like doing, how they learn, and when it's time to learn something new. So this is very encouraging, so that not only the accent will be on economical reasons, but also on the joy of learning. So there's an interview at our website at Lang Leven Leren with Ans. It's only in Dutch, I'm afraid. So, but you can find, no, the interview in the ebook is in English, and on the website it's in. So.
So maybe I can give us some more comments which suits a little bit to what you're saying, Karin. And Pauline, I thought it was possible to share my screen, so I'm trying to do that now. So hopefully I'll succeed in it. Pauline, can you say if you can see my screen now?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
That's wonderful. Good. What we try to do in our country, or based on several studies, is that we thought, okay, if you look to the impact of adult learning and how you can measure them, then maybe it's good to have a kind of a view of the daily life of a person. And if you look to the daily life of a person, then you think, okay, one can get a better life, and it means something for the individual, him or herself, or it can mean something for the environment. It can be something functional and something emotional. And based on that we try to make a draft for a concept of social inclusion. And for us in our studies, among the 10,000 participants, in this model, we include the wider benefits of learning. So first of all, we got activation. For example, that an individual will do something in a functional way to get a better daily life. For example, he learned to fill in a form at the doctor. And the second thing was something emotional, but also for the individual, him or herself. For example, that after following a course in basic skills or a language course, that you feel yourself more safe in the neighborhood. And thirdly, we think that sometimes the wider benefit can be something that's a little bit functional, but also in connection with your environment, so that you're joining activities, for example, that you join a sports club. And the last thing is that it can be something emotional in connection with the environment, so that's a process of connection, so that you're making new friends and that you get out of a state of social isolation. So I think that if you have to discuss the wider benefits of adult learning and the impact of adult learning on wider benefits, you can place it in a kind of a model of social inclusion, that how a person gets a better daily life. And we included, for example, also how to get a better place on the labor market position, and we included that part in the functional part in connection with the environment. So there we also find some criteria how to get a better place on the labor market. The reason why we did this is that we have a kind of umbrella, a model that you can use to describe the wider benefits of adult learning. So, and now we did this for these 10,000 learners. And I stop sharing my screen, and I hope we come back to each other.
Yes, very interesting, definitely. Martina, what about from the policy point of view? Is there enough attention to the wider benefits of learning in adult education?
I think, unfortunately, there definitely is not, because I mean, when you see the participation rates, you can see that too few people seem to understand the benefits of learning, because I think if they understood the benefits better, they would be more motivated to participate, that the two are very interlinked in a way, but we somehow haven't been able to get across to people why they should engage in learning. And so therefore we're not developing this culture of learning, or the learning society that should be sort of an intrinsic part of adult life. And when you look at the adult education survey, well, only 38% of people in 2016 were of working age were participating in formal or non-formal learning in any year. And of the big majority that were not participating at all, almost 50% of them said that it was not their intention to participate, that they had no interest, or it wasn't of use to them, even for their working life. And I think this is quite dramatic, that even the sort of economic value of learning doesn't seem to be well understood. So we really need to change something here. And I was interested in what Karin said about we should also emphasize the joy of it. And also, of course, Maurice was showing how it can be of practical use and practical purpose in daily life. And also, I think in relation to that as well, it has such a huge place to play in the fight against poverty now, because there is a huge correlation between the people who are well educated and the people who are better off, and the people who are not so well educated, and the poverty, and then the new sort of social divides and digital divides that have become so evident in the past year due to the COVID pandemic, and due to the fact that much more people have to use digital tools to survive in their daily lives, and how these digital tools and digital skills can support them also in their learning. So I think as well that, you know, health in the past year as well, we have seen how everybody needs to understand more about their health and about the pandemic. And, you know, this should be something that we should be able to explain to the larger community, that this is something we all need to learn, we all need to continue to learn about. And of course, learning as such is very much a social activity, and it is there for social purposes, as Maurice indicated. And so, you know, building these communities and building the resilience of a community now to survive, this is really, it should be at the heart of learning, and should give it perhaps a new drive in these difficult times that we're living in.
Yeah, Martina,
So,
can I just interrupt you, because I think we can make a connection with the second question there, once you are mentioning the sense of community and community building. Can I ask you to continue letting us know your opinion on how can we help the providers on adult education to get acquaintance on how to measure the progress of learners, and how could this be done? What would you suggest or recommend?
I think it has to be done really at a local level, and because for many people it might be quite intrusive, because you know, tracking, as we call it, is quite an intrusive word. So therefore, I think, you know, the data has to be gathered locally, and probably the educators and the teachers have to understand the value of collecting the data, and what role they can play in this. And I think it's not really part of their training. Many of the educators in adult learning are not even purposely trained. They come from other areas, or they learn on the job, but really professional training that also gives them some direction on the wider benefits of learning, and how to bring that across to the learners on one hand, but also how do you capture that, and how do you capture the progress of the learner. And I think some progress has been made in the Netherlands, actually, at sort of local level, and using many different stakeholders to try and monitor the learners.
Can I ask Maurice, in continuation, in the work you have just presented, how do you support it? Or what did you see in what concerns how to capture this progress of the learner, and how could we support the providers in doing this?
Yeah, what we are doing, it's indeed what Martina is saying, is that we in the Netherlands, and for example in 20 or 22 regions, we do that. We have a durable monitoring system where we on the local level have a pre-test and a post-test on the participants. And what we do there is that we connect learning to other parts of the social domain. Is it okay if I can share another screen with you?
Yes, perfect.
Try to be a little bit more
Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. And then I can go to the internet, I think. And here. For example, what we already mentioned is that we are a UNESCO chair on adult education. So we try to connect to the different sustainable development goals of UNESCO, because they also embrace the other parts of the social domain. For example, poverty, or for example, good health and well-being. Or number 8 is decent work and economic growth. So that's main means labor market position. And what we try to do then, let's have a look, try to find out if this is possible. Yeah. Can you see in the screen impact of learning?
Yes, now yes.
Good. What we try to do is that based on a large number of respondents, we try to find out if these persons got increased their position in daily life on several subdomains of the social domain. So for example, you can see here psychological health. We measured in 2014, and we do it now again, that almost half of the group of the adult learners got a better psychological health. And we also measure that 20 to 30% of the learners got a better position on the labor market by measuring the impact on paid job, apprenticeship, searching for job, paid job with guidance. And besides that, we also try to measure the first goal, of course, if these persons got better basic skills. So and we saw that 70% of them got better national language skills. And we try to measure that on the local level. So in cooperation with the local centers of adult education and with the local communities and the policymakers. It's comparable what you say, Pauline, what Tampada wants to do, that you will discuss in the beginning, okay, what are the most important indicators? And based on the indicators, we will conduct a pre and a post test. And based on that, we try to find out how big the percentage of the group is that experience the increase on the subdomains of the social domain. And then we present that to the policymakers in the financial, the management of the financial resources. So in there, we try to find out, to make the link to what the Adult Education Center is doing with the participants, providing the courses, and then we try to translate that in how you can embrace it as a policymaker and how you can ensure that there are enough financial provisions for that infrastructure of adult education. And that recently we really saw that based on these results, that a lot of communities said, okay, we find out that adult education increases the social inclusion and the labor market position of these participants, so we will ensure the financial provision. So there's what we try to do to make a connection between other subdomains of the social domain and to translate the wider benefits of learning into that social domain. And we also help them, the Adult Education Center to show the result, and we helped the policymakers to use the result to ensure the financial resources for adult education. So now I can come back to you.
And Maurice, I just wondered, can you use the learners to sort of self-assess or self-report as part of this data gathering?
Yeah, you can do that due to the fact what we did the last 10 years is that we did a lot of validation studies in order to find out if we do that, the pre and a post test among learners, is then a real, clear, objective result or a good result to say, okay, this is in part of an increase. So for example, what we did is that we also asked the teachers to tell a little bit about the change of the increase, and then we saw that the rating of the teacher is almost every time higher than what the participant thinks of him or herself. Besides that, we also used reading tests to compare the self-assessment measure with the reading test, and we saw the same figures. We saw the same amount of increase. So we did a lot of validation studies to ensure that this is a possible good result. And the last thing what we did is a kind of, in scientific terms, a correlation and regression analysis. We compared the changes in daily life besides the influence of the learning environment, and we saw that the influence of the learning environment is much higher on the increase of social inclusion than the changes in daily life of the participants themselves. So now we know, after 10,000 participants, that this kind of measuring the impact is really, how do you say that, reliable.
Thank you. Can I still hear Karin, sorry, about this question on how to measure the progress of the learners from the provider's point of view? I know you also have something to show us.
Yes. So as an answer to this question, I would like to mention two European initiatives, in fact, that can be inspirational. The first one is the GOAL project, and the second one is Europass, in fact. So first, the GOAL project. GOAL stands for Guidance and Orientation of Adult Learners. And it was a 3-year Erasmus Plus policy project from about 2 years ago. It was coordinated by the Flemish Department of Education. And in Flanders, we experimented with independent one-stop educational guidance services, putting the specific needs of low-educated learners at the center, because of the hypothesis that this could help to increase the participation of this target group in education and training. So there's a lot to say about the GO project, but I wanted to direct you to the website. It is indicated on the slide, and then especially also to the videos and the testimonials from clients and counselors. But for today, I wanted to draw your attention to the registration system the GO counselors used as a tool for saving background information about the client and his or her previous guidance sessions and follow-up activities, because this could be inspirational for policy makers, in fact. Learning shops, as they are called now, in Flanders, they are not widely supported yet, but if they would be supported, this could be a real good thing for evaluating and follow up. And then the second action, it's on the next slide, is about Europass, which is in fact already an important tool to present yourself and your competencies. And also now the new Europass also supports sharing digital credentials of formal learning, but also of informal learning and non-formal learning. Of course, also Europass should be accessible then for people from the vulnerable groups or with special needs. And then I also wanted to say something about open recognition, and which could be inspiring, because open recognition, it focuses in fact on non-formal forms of recognition where a person or an organization can endorse another person. And this endorsement is based on the knowledge of the person they are endorsing. For example, a baker who has a non-qualified helper in his bakery who learned to bake wonderful bread should be able to endorse this person in some way. And I got this inspiration at the EPALE Community Conference in October last year. And we had there Bert Jeroen from Open Recognition Belgium as a guest speaker in a workshop, and it was called No Lifelong Learning Without Lifelong Recognition. And Bert said that we should find new ways of recognizing learning, and these new ways should be more flexible, more inclusive, and more transparent than the current forms of official certification. Because many times we hear that people should develop their competencies and acquire new ones, but many who already do this and in an informal way are mostly not recognized in a visible and transparent way. And if they would like to get their effort recognized, they usually have to pass a formal exam. And with the development of digital technologies and social networks, this road to informal recognition can and should expand. And Bert also told us that a form of digital badges, for example, can be used in this kind of recognition because they are flexible and transparent and they can be applied in many settings. And then I would like to end with a quote of Andreas Schleicher, who is an OECD lifelong learning expert. And he says that learning should be more fun and that we have to work on making learning more fun by creating an independent qualification structure that motivates people to invest in their skills. And he also says that those systems are easy to build because of technology and that we can start working on it today. So it should be possible. The longer interview with Mr. Schleicher can also be found in the ebook.
Okay, thank you, Karin. I think you already answered my last question, which would be in terms of policy, what could we do to have a better data collection and monitoring?
Yeah, sure. I mixed up the questions. I'm sorry.
No, thank you, because I think both things linked very well, but I still would like to hear very briefly one last time, Martina, although you have mentioned before that it should be done probably at national or local level, that's what exactly you mentioned. What could you still tell us very briefly about the policy that could be implemented in terms of data collection and measurement?
Well, of course, we will continue to negotiate EU level targets and objectives, because I think it's good to keep in order to keep it's important in order to keep the sector on the radar, you know, in European discussions and even among education ministers when they meet. You know, they often talk about school education or higher education, but I think if we insist, and that's what the action plan now on implementing the European Pillar of Social Rights is doing, it is setting targets for adult participation in learning for 2030, which we say should be at 60%. This is, of course, huge if we look at the numbers that are currently in learning, 38%. But you know, if we want to leave nobody behind, as we say we do in the Commission policy, then these numbers are not even enough. And you know, there's a similar one for having all of the 16 to 74-year-olds with at least basic digital skills by 2030. But in fact, you know, these people need the basic skills today in order to cope with what's going on. But I think also getting transversal, it's interesting what Morris was saying, that, you know, they're involving many different environments and settings in the provision and collection. And at European level, we tend to be a bit more siloed in our approach. We have skills agenda, we have education area, then we have health policy, but surely now at the moment, you know, the health program should really have a strong learning component. And we do, in fact, you know, talk about having skills strategies that have a whole of government approach. And I think if we could get this whole of government approach across policies, that we would also perhaps get a better understanding of what is needed. And there's always a challenge about putting the soft benefits or convincing policymakers, I think, of the soft outcomes and benefits, because they're somehow not easy to describe and they're not easy to quantify. So, you know, having so and so many people back at work or whatever is much, it speaks more simply to them. So, if we can have this whole of government approach where everybody is talking a similar language, I think it would help.
Yeah, thank you, Martina. I'm sorry, but I'm being pressured by Pauline. And so you don't know what kind of pressure she's doing to me, but it's a lot. Maurice, I think that Martina gave us a motto that we can use for your last words. How could we do it not to leave anyone behind? And you have to tell us that in 1 minute.
Yeah, I can do that. What we noticed for example, in the Netherlands, and also in what we try to do in Flanders, is that we make very strong connections on local level with other policymakers. And for example, I think the best example now is in the Netherlands towards poverty. We have to fight or to combat poverty. So the policymakers on poverty we show them after a course for participants how many increase they experience concerning their financial skills. And so by using adult education, we can combat poverty. So what we try to do on the local level is to make connections between the policymakers of adult education and other policies in the social domain. And the best example is poverty. And the next step, what we will try to do is that the policymaker of poverty will invest in adult education due to the fact that we can show that adult education can do something for the domain of poverty.
Perfect. Thank you. You made it in 1 minute. Pauline, would you like to share with the speakers some of the questions?
Sure. So there was a question. It's not targeted to any speaker, so anyone can answer. Do you see the role of guidance in the progress mapping monitoring? So where do you see the role of guidance in this process?
I can say a little bit about what we did in our studies. For example, we try to translate that in the guidance of the teacher towards the participant, and we find out if we could measure a correlation between the guidance and the increase of social inclusion. And we found out that if you have professional teachers, paid teachers, who can give the guidance to the teachers, that the amount of increase was much higher than if you have, for example, only volunteers on this part. So that supports our mission a little bit, that adult education is really a job to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think guidance for the individual as well is terribly important, and guidance, not only for a job or towards a course, but guidance that also incorporates some elements of outreach, and that it's a proactive guidance service that goes out there and tries to bring people in, because like the education offer, the individuals are not necessarily aware that there is a guidance service out there that can help them. So I think it certainly is an area that needs development in parallel.
I shared two links to an EPALE interview from Hannelore Engels, and she's in fact she works in a learning shop, Leerwinkel, in Flanders, and then another one because now they're really working towards that the learning shops would be rolled out in the whole of Flanders and Brussels, and there's a lot of interesting information about guidance. And this goes further on the goal project, the results. So I shared the articles in the chat.
Thank you. Pauline, do we have time for one more?
Yeah, just a second question, and then we can close the conference. So it was what type of human capacities and skills do we need to assess the learner needs in terms of health, emotional, career management? So what are the competencies that the person conducting the assessment needs to conduct the assessment?
I have to refer to the goal project again, because there was like a profile of the people working in the learning shops, what their competences should be. So that can also be found in the results of the goal project.
I think, to be honest, is that you have to try to have a holistic approach on this. So you have to find out if adult education can contribute to health, but also to labor market position. And for example, in order to raise kids and to feel yourself more at ease in daily society. But it's difficult to measure that at once. So you have to try to find out with the Adult Education Center and the policymakers on which part of that holistic approach you will, or which part of all these capacities of human capacities you will focus on, for example, in one small time schedule. What we do in our country, for example, is that in spring, in one region we say, okay, now we try to focus on health, the impact on health, and in summer or maybe in autumn we try to measure the impact on, for example, the increase of decrease of poverty. So you have to have a holistic approach, but you have to divide it, otherwise it's too much for the learner, him or herself.
Yes, and probably the staff as well need to be need to have much more training and experience in assessing learners' backgrounds, and not only their progress in what they're trying to teach them, but just their whole profile, and in order to see how they progress, and to be able to carry out this sort of assessment and validation of what they know. And we cannot sort of leave, I think, the validation of non-formal and informal learning just outside of the teaching profession to somebody else. I think they need to be able to do it as well when that's called for, and not just assess in the formal way through exams or whatever.
Yes, so thank you all. I think it was very inspiring, and we would have a lot more to say on the subject that we are dealing with, but we have no time. I would like, first of all, to give you some last useful information. But of course, first of all, I should thank the speakers that were with us today, both Karin, Maurice, and Martina. They made a huge effort. So thank you all for being here and for giving us such nice inputs on your experience and your views on this topic. As far as the project concerns, I know that the project is now coming to its end on the end of March, but the platform will still share some results with you on the next weeks and after the conference. So, for example, we will share the conference recording and a web article about this conference, and of course the slide presentations which you have been asking for in the chat. We will also share the results of the pilot test, which are also important, and of the digital tool, as well as the policy report. You can express, and I've been seeing the link on the chat also, you can express your interest on the tool, and Pauline has shared the link on Google Forms, and you can fill it in. Pauline and the team will try to answer all your questions on the project, and we'll share the answers with you. And what we would also like to give you, lastly, is a short evaluation form to evaluate the conference. You know, also, well, it is for quality purposes, but also because it's compulsory in this kind of events. It's really important for us to have your feedback on the conference. I think that Pauline will share the link also in the chat. You can register to the Lifelong Learning Platform newsletter and follow us on social media if you haven't done it. So please go ahead. And Finally, of course, having more than 100 participants, it's never too much to thank you all from different parts of the world for being with us for these 1.5, almost 2 hours on this day. We all know that there are a lot of conferences taking part. There is also a very important press conference running at the moment. So thank you all for being here. We hope that you follow the work of the Lifelong Learning Platform, and to see you all in a very brief moment, probably in the next event. Thank you.